According to Tom Rainer, 6% of churches in America are effective in evangelism. Let's change the statistic.
Welcome to GoCast, a podcast designed to inspire and equip pastors and leaders to lead soul-winning churches. We have a mission to go and make disciples. This is GoCast.
Hey everyone, welcome to GoCast. I'm your host, Kelly Stickel, joined by my friend and co-host, Tim Tribble. How are you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing good. Today's episode's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. On today's episode, I have my friend, Pastor Juan Rodriguez from Puerto Rico. We had him in season 1. He was planting a church when we interviewed him in season 1. And in January of 2020, he planted that church.
Right.
And then 6 weeks later, COVID happened. Lockdowns happened. And so we had this conversation, amazing conversation about it's one thing to pastor a church through this season, but how about a brand new congregation without established relationships, without established leadership teams, all the rest of it, and navigating through this entire season. Fascinating conversation. But again, in this conversation, it's come up all season long, where this has been a season where God has really affected our priorities and what is most important to us and what we place value in, as you know, in the past, pre-COVID, has kind of shifted a little bit in this season.
True.
So is there anything that you and your wife have talked through or reevaluated as far as priorities, in regard to church ministry, all of that, something that you've noticed or seen?
I think so. A lot of our shift and our focus has been more like so inside our home, so with our family and with our kids, and we've had a lot more talks recently about like just being that extra more intentional in the season of the chaotic and the unknown. Our kids are going through it. They're in school, they're out of school, they're in school, they're out of school, and they're handling it the best they can. So most of our talks have been like, hey, how do we most effectively disciple our own kids in our own home, having that Bible reading time with them and infusing just like the same culture that we're trying to push with our online audience. Is just like, how do we build resilience in this series, and how do we lean into our anchor that never fails? And so that's kind of been mainly our focus in this season.
Man, that's so good. I think a lot of us just evaluating, all kinds of priorities, home, but and coming back to, I think a lot of the disciplines of the faith and saying we take them for granted before, like fellowship with one another. Yeah. We took that for granted until you lose relationship or you're not able to connect with people at the same level.
Right.
And you're going, man, I really need that. That really did fuel me. Bible reading, like you're saying, even within family and stuff like that, and going, yeah, we did it and it was routine and all of that. But the value of that comes to a whole nother level. What church is, what we're supposed to do as leaders and pastors, all of this is reevaluations, and very, very important for us to do. And I'm sure all of you have been reevaluating lots as well in your homes, in your churches. And for those going through this conversation is going to be very, very helpful as Pastor Juan talks about planting a church through COVID, but then also talks about some of the pleasant surprises and what God has been doing in him and through him in this time and in his church, as well as what he senses for the future with his church and with the global church as well. So without further ado, let's go to my conversation with Pastor Juan Rodriguez of Arise Church, Puerto Rico. Well, hey Juan, so good to see you, my friend. Welcome back to GoCast.
Absolutely, man. It is a pleasure to be back. It's been a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Last time you were on the program, you were I think that was January 2020. You were just about to plant Arise Church, Puerto Rico. And man, it's been a ride. So you planted the church. That was all good. And then like a month later, we hit a pandemic. So man, talk to us about planting a church is hard enough on its own, but planting a church amidst a pandemic and lockdowns and all the craziness. Talk to us about that, man. How's it been going?
Hey, man. Well, man, first of all, man, thank you for having me, and it's an honor to connect with you, man. I love you, brother. There's nothing like connecting with family, and the beauty of the church is that families all over the world, So we planted Arise Church January 26, 2020 in Dorado, Puerto Rico. on a beautiful sunny day. Everything was, I mean, that whole day was honestly, it's one of the best days of my life.
Yeah.
We worked super hard. Our team worked super hard. My family worked super hard, and we had an amazing launch. We packed the entire church out. There was no seating whatsoever. Our kids ministry were packed. We launched with 260, I think it was 267 people on launch day.
Come on, that's awesome.
This is Puerto Rico. This is unheard of. What we were
Yeah.
doing, no one, it was kind of like, man, what are you guys doing? And the beauty of it, that same day, we had 27 salvations, which for us
Wow.
were like, okay, God, this is why we do what we're doing, which we're still on this spiritual high. Everything is exciting. We're loving everything. And 6 weeks go by. And then we start hearing, hey, there's this pandemic that's going on, and we're in Puerto Rico. It's going to take a while to get here. And then a week later, it's like a little bit closer. And then we start seeing people with masks pop up, like, man, we're in Puerto Rico. Why do you have a mask on? And then more people wear masks. And then literally 6 weeks later, we get the call, hey, look, the government is doing a full shutdown. And we're like, what do you mean? What even is a full shutdown? And how does this affect a brand new church? So we launched January 26th. 6 weeks later, we were locked down. Puerto Rico was on a full lockdown. Everything was locked down. Everything but grocery stores were closed, just like many places throughout the world. And we had to pivot. We had to pivot quickly because we're still getting people to know us. And just starting this brand new church. And we actually. At that time, we were doing our messages in Spanish and we have translator to translating into English, which doesn't work online. So we have a whole different set of issues of who we are as a church. We're actually a bilingual church. So one church, two languages is kind of our tagline. So we were like, okay, we would have our worship is bilingual. So all of our songs are mixed. You start singing it in Spanish, you start singing it in English. And then at that time, our sermon was in Spanish with translation in English. And that doesn't work on social media. You can't.
No, absolutely.
Channel A is for English, channel B is for Spanish,
Wow.
So we had to move on top of, navigating all this stuff. We had to do two services now. So we went from, one church doing one service to doing two services, one in English, one in Spanish. This was all within, the first couple months of launching our church. So
that's crazy.
Yeah,
man. Even if you're talking about, launch day and all the rest of it, I just got to go back to that because that gets my heart pumping again because I've planted churches, and I think the greatest adrenaline rush ever is seeing all the advertising coming in and watching faces you don't know, an entire congregation preaching to an entire congregation you don't know, and going, okay, everything is going to be based on, and the success of this is going to be based on this message and this service and all that, and then seeing people respond with salvations, all the rest of it. Man, that is the greatest rush. There's nothing better than church planting. So just got to go back to that because that just got my heart pumping again as you're talking about opening day, because that's my favorite. I love that. And then going to, it's one thing to go through this pandemic as for us pastors in established churches where we've got established core groups, where we're doing one language, we're trusted leaders. Our congregations trust us because they know us. We've walked through different seasons with them before. But then, for you, you're now needing to lead, your congregation, which don't know you don't know them, you don't have an established core group. You got all these dynamics, multiple languages, all of these things going on at the same time. Man, dude, my heart, but I was thinking about you, praying for you a lot because as this thing locked down, I knew you're just getting started, and I was celebrating with you online and seeing all this stuff, and I was going, man, this is challenging for me. What is one going through and all those things. So, man, talk to us about what's been in all this craziness. What's been the greatest challenge so far in, after launch, and you got this big excitement, and to be able to plow ahead. What's been the biggest challenge so far?
Man, I'll be honest. The hardest thing was the aspect of a lockdown and being able to try to build community through a lockdown.
Yeah.
On top of building community with our new congregation, we were still in the process of building community with our leaders. Our leaders were brand new. Our relationship was brand new. And now, it's like meeting somebody and then a week later getting married and then saying you can't live together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You really don't get to know each other, and then the little bit of time that you do have together, you haven't learned each other's nuances and differences, and that was very difficult, because the way that I am and the way that I lead could be perceived differently if it's only perceived through social media or if it's only perceived through a Zoom or through a
Right.
text, versus if we're seeing each other face to face and you're able to hear my expressions and see, and it's just completely different. So that was
Absolutely.
very difficult, as we tried to build a relationship with leaders and just kind of pull the best out of them when they themselves were going through the hardest thing that they have ever gone through. Aside from us going through the difficulties as pastors, our congregation and our leaders were going through it. They were not knowing where their security was coming from and where their next check was coming from. And yet they were still trying to find ways to serve the church, and then they didn't have the best part of the church, which is community. Jesus hung out with 12 dudes and they had so much fun. I joke around and I say, man, it would probably be a whole bunch of joking around with 12 dudes getting together, because anytime I get together with any of my male friends, there's somebody being made fun of. We're playing pranks on somebody.
Yeah.
It's just gonna happen. And I just imagine that with Jesus.
Yeah.
And the same thing, those unexpected moments that normally happen around community could not happen. Those spontaneous moments where spontaneous conversations, deep conversations come up, spontaneous moments that you're laughing together with somebody, they just didn't happen. It's very difficult to build community with leaders, and some of them, some people rose to the occasion. Some people, honestly, they just, kind of fizzled out, and you try to communicate, and it was very difficult. It was just you kind of, some people kind of rise to the occasion, and some people that this pandemic has hurt them, a lot, spiritually, emotionally, and they haven't been able to get out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I think that's affected all of us. I know, just for me as a leader, I didn't realize how much I relied on conferences, just and getting together. I attended conferences online and Zoom, different things as well. I was like, man, something's greatly missing, and it's the community and all of that. And I think I don't know. I've shifted my pastoring a little bit and going, okay, it's a lot more than just the event and what happens, from stage or on stage. Man, the church really is, the strength of the church really is in the community, and we need each other. Like, we were created for each other. Like, we desperately need each other. So, man, amazing. So let's pivot a little bit. What's surprised you in a good way during this time? Like, what has what's been most pleasant surprise in this time?
It's funny because the hardest thing and the most positive thing is the same thing, and that's people. I saw some people just rise, that people that you were like, man, this person, I don't know what they'll be able to accomplish. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic just turned them into a superstar, that they just rose to the occasion, and they were like, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure Jesus is shared. We want, this is our church. Again, we're a brand new church. And for somebody to say, this is my church and I'm not going to let anything fail. We're going to go after it, and we've had people like that had just stepped up, and they're like, they tell me, Pastor, whatever it takes. This is one of our guys was like, Pastor, this is our tribe. We're in this no matter what. And we had some issues in an area where he wasn't serving in, and he was like, I have those skills. It's not something that I want to do, but I have those skills. I'll take the wheel and just jumped in and just started serving. And that those are the things that kind of surprised me. People who are just like, this is mine. I take ownership. I take responsibility versus just deflecting ownership and deflecting responsibility in the middle of the hardships. Because, as leaders, the buck stops with us. We get it. And we can't deflect that no matter what, but we see that when leaders are just like, well, ask pastor, what does pastor want to do? What does pastor want to do? At that moment when we're trying to figure things out, and then there's that one person or the two people that says, Pastor, don't worry about it. I got this. Pastor, I don't know. That to me speaks of leadership because it speaks of ownership. It's like, I own this. We will share this weight together, versus this is your weight. What do you want me to do with it?
I love that. That's so good. I mean, and it's amazing because for someone to rise up and take that kind of ownership with a brand new, baby like your church is, and saying that is amazing. I think that's going to bode well in the long run too. Going, man, I mean, the pressure of COVID and the pandemics and the lockdowns, it really does reveal to all of us who are true leaders, and under pressure it reveals who the true leaders are and who aren't. And man, I mean, your core group is going to be stronger. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example. In our congregation, we had two couples that went through some during the pandemic, went through some very difficult times. And one couple didn't. We try to reach out to help. Hey, how can we help? How can we serve you? Let's get through this together. And they're like, no, we're gonna handle this privately. We're gonna deal with this. We think we'll be okay. And then boom, the relationship is gone. One relationship, they actually kind of went through the same thing. They actually went ahead and they even got a divorce, but in that process, when we found out they got a divorce, we're like, hey, let's walk through this with you. Let's pray with you. We're here with you. And the guy he himself, he had already joined a small group. So he's doing community with other guys that are challenging him. Brother, don't give up. Yes, even though you got a divorce, you didn't want that. And I really don't think she wants it. And actually, tomorrow, we're going to be redoing their wedding vows because they're getting remarried.
Come on.
So that's the thing. Like in the hardest situations, some people gave up and some people kept fighting. And that's the thing that we see is people that it's still people, but we have a fight to fight. And we want to do that the way that God wants us to do it. And I think you see the difference.
So good. Well, not only did they keep fighting, but they pulled in you and the church and said we can't do this on our own, and man, that makes all the difference. So good, man. We've been talking about the church and all the rest of it, but man, this pandemic's been, we forget our people are leaning on us as pastors and leaders, but this pandemic's been a season of all kinds of stuff for us as leaders as well. How have you been doing personally through this whole time, man?
Man, it has been difficult at times. I think my wife and I, we speak about, we thought a lot of things shut down for the pandemic and their lives slowed down. For ours, it ramped up. We were going twice as fast. We were doing twice as much. There's one thing to prepare for your sermon and then preach it on Sunday. There's another thing to prepare for your sermon, prepare a practice, and then create a worship and an experience and preach that twice, all recorded within the same week. And then you still have Sunday where you're still reaching out to your community. And even though maybe the message is recorded or you're doing it live, there's still that whole rush of things that have to get done.
Yeah.
So honestly, and again, this is our first year. So we're still learning as a husband and wife, pastors of this brand new congregation, how to be pastors with this playbook that we pretty much said, okay, this is our playbook. There's no need to have that right now because there's nothing in this playbook that says anything about how to handle a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
So and we're twice as busy. So there were times where we were physically exhausted, we were mentally exhausted, and we just needed. We needed to reach out. We had friends that we were able to speak to. We had even each other, where we were able to, as husband and wife, talk to each other and be like, hey, this is how I feel. I am exhausted. I don't want to do this right now. And then just walk through that season. And there was a time that we just had to get away. In August, we just were, like, hey, we just need a few days away as a family, just to get away and just to refresh. We got two kids, 12 and 10-year-old girls, and they need mom and daddy too, and they're going through a pandemic also. You know what I mean? That's the one thing that's been something on our mind. It's like our kids are going. We're not the adults. We're not the only ones going through a pandemic. Our kids are
That's
going
right.
through a pandemic also, and
That's
to
right.
be able to watch over their hearts and their minds and let them know, hey, look, this is something that we're all struggling with. This is hard for us, just as it is for you.
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't feel fair, and it doesn't. And there's a lot of times where it's not fun. But we're together and we're going through this, So,
Yeah.
so we've gone through some ups and downs, and as a family, and we've actually seen the hand of God just kind of show us that He's there in every step of the way.
So good. I think that's probably one of the most common things, talking with pastors and leaders through this whole season is the most common thing I'm hearing from everybody is, man, I was at more tired than I've ever been, more exhausted than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And then kind of panicking. I don't know if you're like me in that regard, but panicking because the same things that I used to do to pull myself out of the tired doldrums and all the rest of it didn't seem to work anymore. And you're going, well, wait, then you start to panic and going, okay, what's going on? Am I breaking down? What's happening? But really, I mean, it's been a season where we've worked harder than ever. And then we get no rest or no wait time like what we're typical, or refresh time like we can. So, man, but at the same time, seeing the hand of God move everywhere and going, this is like, but for the grace of God, man, it's been a ride, and let's not do this again. Let's just saying.
Yeah, exactly. So fun. Thanks, God. No, we don't have to go through this desert again. Okay.
Yeah, let's. We've been through it. We've experienced this wilderness. Moving on. All right.
Right.
Man, so is Puerto Rico? You guys are still under restrictions, right? Or
yeah, absolutely.
you're not Florida, so you're widely open like our mutual friends in Florida.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah, we're still under some pretty strict restrictions. And just this week, some others that were kind of added actually versus being taken away. And it's been pretty difficult. A lot of people are fearful, and we're trying to make sure that people are able to trust God, and we want your emotions are real and your emotions are true, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily right.
Yeah.
So you may feel anxious and it may feel scary, but that doesn't mean that necessarily is. If you're doing your part and you're protecting yourself, the fear may be something that the enemy wants to try to do to create separation from you and God because you're too anxious and you're feeling through so many things. Being able to know that yes, these things are happening, but we are safe. We're going to be smart. I tell my team, we're going to be smart, but we're also going to have faith. We're going to do everything to protect ourselves, but we're also not going to allow that fear is something that's going to be part of our day to day.
Yeah. So, I mean, every church is battling with, we've got two camps in society, saying, we need more restrictions. We're abiding by everything the government's saying. Then you got the other camp saying, this is ridiculous. And those people, both camps, attend our churches. So how have you and your leadership kind of navigated all of that and keeping, I mean, again, established churches who have established relationships can get along, but man, how have you navigated that with a brand new church and not everybody knows everybody or getting to know one another? And how have you navigated that?
Man, dude, that part has been pretty difficult. Because I mean, what we decided to do is we're going to pray. Two, what we did is we actually have some professionals that are in the medical field that are on our team, and we got them to say, hey, how can we best protect our congregation? So what we did is we created these protocols and these systems that we run with every single Sunday. And then we were able to tell people, hey, look, these protocols were created by, doctors and nurses that come to this congregation that took the time to look at our entire building and look at how we can protect people, what we can do, everything that we can physically do on our part to make this the safest place possible. I say all the time, we're 10 times safer than Walmart,
Yeah.
Which seems that I don't know if you knew this, but you can't catch COVID in Walmart because no one has a problem going.
It's amazing. It's the no-go zone. At Costco too. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So and another thing is we just give people the flexibility. We say, hey, look, we've continued to be online. hey, if you don't feel comfortable coming, join us online. Maybe you
Yeah.
feel comfortable in a smaller group. So join one of our small groups. Some of our small groups are held outside. We've done some of the small groups that have been digital, some haven't. And just give people the opportunity. We know that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And we have grown from this, and it's taught us a lot. And we know that there's people that we have had. I mean, people from different parts of the country in the United States that watch us every Sunday faithfully.
Awesome.
And it's like this is now their church.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, God, we wouldn't have pushed to do this, but that one person that is watching faithfully, God, you wanted them to hear this, and they watch faithfully. People have
So good.
have somebody in California, have people in Florida. I mean, Virginia, Delaware, that watch every week. Every week, this is a
So good.
church.
So good. That's exciting. So talk to us about like a year and a half later, planted in a pandemic. How does the church look now? What's happening?
Man, I'm so blessed to be the pastor of an amazing, amazing train team. One of the things that we've continued to do throughout the pandemic is we've still had our growth track and still
Yeah.
developed team members. And they have grown, and I mean, I think like half of our church is our dream team.
Wow.
Which is huge because these are people that are coming to church on Sunday, but not just coming to church on Sunday. They're serving on Sunday. They're finding a place to do something and work. And throughout the week, we go out and we do our serve days once a month. We've done that. We never stopped doing that. During even the lockdowns, we did, in the roughest lockdown, we still did a food drive. You know what I mean? Hey,
Wow.
bring the stuff. We're going to get it out.
Yeah.
And so
Perfect.
we found ways to serve our community even in the lockdown. And that has been kind of what, we just chose, okay, what are we going to focus on? And we focus on one, building our dream team, and two, building our small groups.
So good.
We had our dream team party in February, which was great. We actually rented a whole restaurant, and so we didn't have no problems about who's going to be there. It was just our team. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I told him was the good old fashioned Truett Cathy Chick-fil-A story, which is we're not focusing on getting bigger right now, but we are going to get better.
Yeah.
So every team, we're like, okay, we have a team with this amount of people. How can we get this team better? Because there is going to be a moment where this is not going to be such a consummation of our day and of our mind and of our energy. It's going to be something that may be with us for years, maybe gone all of a sudden. That I don't know. But one thing that we will be is we'll be ready because we've
Yeah.
focused on getting better. We focused on how to be a better worship team, how to be a better kids ministry, how to be better greeters, how to have better small groups. So that right now when there's 4 or 5 people on these teams, and that we've doubled, and there's now 10 people on this team, it's going to be a better team because of what we did now this season.
So good. So good. So as you look into the future, what are you most excited about right now, both personally and for the church?
Man, I'm just excited to see what God is going to do. I think God is taking this moment to reveal a lot of our hearts. And I think preaching is going to change. I think
Yeah.
subjects of what we speak about is going to change in this season. Realities that we're confronting is going to change because I think this whole season, not only pandemic, but just everything that we're learning about our cultures, it's just shining a light on areas that we've kind of glossed over. You know what I mean? We've been so
Yeah.
focused on our spiritual comfort, that we've neglected other areas that God is kind of shining a light on. Are we too comfortable? And I think this is kind of going to be a season for myself included, where I'm like, God, what do you want of me? And what do you want the church to look like?
Yeah.
Not my plan, but what is your plan? What do you want us to serve? We have this plan, God, but we were willing to change and adapt. When COVID first hit, all of us pastors, we were pivoting. We were really
Yeah.
good at that. We're like, okay, we're gonna
Yeah.
do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna change. But now it's been over a year now. So are we gonna just go right back into our old ways and just kind of, okay, we preach on Sunday. We do this. We have our schedule of how we preach, and we're not going to address issues in our society, in our culture, or are we actually going to address some of these things culturally, emotionally, that some people are going through? And even stuff like with COVID, are we going to address the people that maybe won't return to our churches, but will forever be an online member of our congregation. Is that person still good enough to be part of our members? It's like, oh no, they're online only, but what's the difference? What
Yeah.
about the people who work every Sunday and can never attend our congregation the time that we have services? But they watch on Monday night when they're exhausted and this is their church. So how can we reach
So
out and
good.
make sure that they feel loved? How can we bridge? Of course, just like with everybody, we've heard of the racial divide here in Puerto Rico. It's been a little different. It's weird for me because I'm from urban America. I'm a Latino Puertorriqueño who grew up in urban America, who faced racism myself, who've been through things. And now I live in Puerto Rico, where the beauty of Puerto Rican families is, in my family, for example, my family, I look typical Puerto Rican. I got that dark skin. But I have a blonde-haired, blue-eyed people in my family. I have dark skin, curly hair in my family. You look and how when you pick an emoji and press your finger on it and you can look at
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
different colors they have. Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
family. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
you know, um, so for me, it was kind of like outside looking in, seeing same, but as an island, we still have issues that we can confront. We still have divisions that we can confront. And I think that's a key part of it is division. How the enemy is out to divide us. So how can we bring unity to that? So for myself, I think that's it. It's just loving God and letting God lead me. How we can bring unity? How can we bring wisdom? How can we bring godly divine teaching to people so that they understand what God wants of them? So
So
as for me
good.
personally, man, I just want to go on vacation.
I'm with you.
Yeah. I would just want to be. Everybody's like, oh, you're on an island. That's great. That's great. But I want to go somewhere else right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can understand understand that. That's the thing. I was like, I didn't think I'd ever miss airplanes again, but I was like, man, I just want to be on an airplane. Like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, so there's, you've alluded to this, and I think a lot of the conversations that I've had with a lot of pastors is this idea, even on the podcast this year, it's come up multiple times, where the idea, what's it going to look like, post pandemic, and then the idea that it's not going to go back to exactly what it was, and it shouldn't go back to what it was. I think much has changed for the Big C church in all of us in this pandemic, and I think that's a good thing. I don't know that. I think God's doing something much deeper in all of us, and I think the church is going to come out of this much stronger. But what do you feel has changed permanently, and how have you been adjusting, as a pastor, as a leader, to that change?
I think one thing that changed, honestly, is the perception of the church. I think through this pandemic, some people have either learned to overvalue the church or undervalue the church. I think there's some people who learned how important church was in their life, and there's
Yeah.
some people who are like, wow, I guess church wasn't important for me, and then they they have fallen away. But that doesn't mean that God is no longer important to them. So how can we bridge that gap for them so that their spiritual walk doesn't consist of only church?
Right.
But we've learned to take people on spiritual journeys where church is not your only thing, but you have a spiritual walk and a connection with God where church is probably part of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's been the kind of thing that forever we're going to deal with is, people say, well, during the pandemic, I didn't go to church and I was fine,
Yeah.
but when our churches were closed, we were like, hey, it's important to go online. It's important to go online. It's important to go online. But I think our focus has to be, hey, it's important to have a relationship with Jesus. It's important to have a
Yeah.
relationship with Jesus. It's important to have a relationship with
Yeah.
Jesus, no matter what, above all things.
Yeah.
And I think that out of that relationship with Jesus is where honestly we're going to see people come that are going to be stronger than ever, that are going to be their marriages are going to be stronger than ever, their finances are going to be stronger than ever, because it's been on a dependency now on Jesus and not a dependency on the church.
So good. So good. I love this, man. So thank you so much. This has been so good, and just seeing you again is, I don't know, it's encouraging to
Yeah,
me, and excited to see God moving in in you, your church, and thriving and all of that. So, is there anything that, man, God's been speaking to you lately that that revelation or something that's been on your heart, or anything that we haven't talked about that you just want to share with those watching, listening?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Just honestly, in these last couple of days, it started in my sermon prep last weekend. It's actually continued, and it's just as simple. It's just as simple. And sometimes as pastors, we forget about the simplicity of who God is.
Yeah,
And it's just the name of Jesus.
yeah,
How we went through so much, and we're going to continue to go through so much. I think this is just the birth pains, and it's funny because I'm very logistical. So to me, it's like, man, that's so simple. As I'm reading this and I'm studying this, it's like, this is so simple. Just to call out the name Jesus.
yeah,
And like, I'm a pastor, I say it all the time. I preach about him all the time, and
yeah,
just reminding myself, no. There's times that I need to call on his name. That I need to call on his name. And when I call out on his name, there's darkness trembles. And I think just as pastors, we need to remember the simplicity of Jesus, the power that there is in his name, the love that we need to feel for him. And man, again, I was reading more on that this morning, and I'm like, God, I just need to remember that simplicity of the power of your name,
so good.
So if that encourages anybody that you're just overcomplicated because there's so many systems that you're working on, things that you're trying to get right, stop for a second and just remember who we do this for.
Yeah,
It's not to build a bigger church, because it's not our church to begin with. It's not to build a bigger building, because the building is just a reflection of who's supposed to be in it, which is the church. And the church belongs to Jesus. And when we say his name, when we remember who it's for, when we remember why we're doing it for, it kind of brings us back to the basic thing of, remember that moment when you first said his name and you called him as your Lord, as your Savior, and it changed everything in that instant, and he can do it again.
Absolutely. I love that. That's so good. And I think it's so timely, because I think a lot of us have been heads down, navigating change, leading in uncertainty, which is unusual, just digging down, working harder, like we've talked earlier, so much. And I think in all of that work and just trying to, shift from what was growth mode before into survival mode, and having to lead through all of that kind of stuff, that sometimes, we just need to recenter and going, hey, no, this is about Jesus. He hasn't left the throne. He's not. This is not out of his control. We can need to run to him, and that's where our refreshing is going to come from. That's where help's going to come from. That's what we need to connect people up to. It's all about him. So man, I love that. So good, man. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us again. We're praying for you, cheering you on. Excited for Rise Church Puerto Rico, and excited what's going to happen when everything opens up, hopefully sooner than later, and really believe that
Amen.
It's going to be a relaunch at a whole nother level for you.
Amen, man. We believe it, man. We've been seeing God doing some amazing things, and we know he's going to continue to do it. Plus, we have a beautiful backdrop to be able to do this in, So I don't know what the weather's like up there today, but here, it's just absolutely beautiful. Palm trees are swaying. I went out to a walk this morning. It was on the beach. Just a rough life. The rough aspects of serving.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, as you can see, you're in a t-shirt. I'm in a hoodie. That says enough about the weather change or what's going on. And we're basically on 13th version of spring right now. That's how it works here in Canada. We have the weather goes to where it's making us believe spring's actually coming, and then in a day it shifts again. So we're having fun, but we're praying for you as you rough it for Jesus. It's great.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. So
yeah, well, bless you, my friend. Thank you so much. It's great to see you again.
Appreciate you, brother.
What a great conversation, and another great conversation with Pastor Juan. Hopefully that really helped you. I loved how he wrapped that up and saying we got to recenter on keeping the main thing, that being why we do what we do as pastors, as leaders. It's all about Jesus. I think we need to do that personally, but we also need to preach that, get that into our people, and again, connect people to Jesus. We get so busy as leaders sometimes, heads down, working hard, that we miss that priority. And so I think that's a great reminder. I love that. What stood out to you?
Well, number one, Kelly, let's just say that our tropical friends seem to have a different spunk about them in their voice, and they seem happy and jolly. I don't know if it's like the sun that they're getting or whatever it is, but
we're slightly deficient in vitamin D. That's what the problem is.
We're missing that. But on a more serious note, I loved how he just differentiated between those two camps that he saw when the pandemic hit. Was those that realized that they needed church, and then those that kind of undervalued church and said, I really didn't miss church at all in this season. And so just realizing, it's so easy for us that regularly go and attend. It's like, of course I miss church. I've missed people, but to know that there's those people out there that have been attending, but it's kind of a take it or leave it situation. And so it just makes you open your eyes to realize that there's still a camp out there that needs to kind of come around to, the importance of how necessary the church is in our life.
Right. And we shouldn't assume that everybody has the same passion or value for church as we do. So I think that's important to remind ourselves. But we want to continue this conversation with all of you. We at GoCast aren't just about getting information to you. We want to hear from you, connect with you, and work back and forth on what is working for you and what you're sensing God is saying, especially in this time. We're all in the same boat, in the same storm, and it's so helpful to know that we have each other and that we're hearing the same thing from God. So how do people connect with us?
For sure. Let me list all the ways. So you can go to gocast.ca, you can go to Facebook, Instagram, message us, and just let us know how this content is relating to you. And also you can find us on any of the major podcast playing platforms.
Yeah, and connect with us on social media, have the conversation with us. We would love it. Well, next week, we're concluding season 2 already, which is amazing, but we have an amazing guest. We have Pastor Larry Bry, who's one of the founding members of Elevation Church. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this church. I'm sure you have. Elevation Church, pastored by Pastor Stephen Furtick, is one of the global phenomena. It's one of the world's fastest growing, most influential churches. Pastor Larry was one of the founding members, and we have a conversation with him about how COVID affected Elevation Church, because we sometimes look from the outside looking in at some of these churches, big churches, world influential churches, and saying, man, they have no problems. They have no issues. Everything just goes so easy for them. Well, not the case. And Pastor Larry fills us in on some of the things that have been happening in Elevation Church through COVID. So here's a little snippet from that conversation next week.
The struggle has always been there. It just takes different forms and different sizes as you grow. There's the disciples had empty net problems, and then they had full net problems. They still had problems. And so we've always kind of lived with the mantra, we think inside the box. And it's not just a cute little statement. It really defines meetings, it defines decisions, it defines cultures. What do we have? And the essence of it is we embrace our limitations, because we believe from the limitation will come the greatest resource and creativity we'll ever see.
You're not going to want to miss that conversation with Pastor Larry Bry next week on GoCast. Thank you so much for joining us again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of GoCast. We hope you feel inspired and better equipped to take your community for Christ. Make sure to subscribe to receive each new episode as it's released. Let's go and break the stat together.